right, Classic Radio, Force 105.5, 105.9 on the FM dial. Good morning to those of you who are listening to Classic Radio and GBN TV. Welcome, it's to the point. It's Monday, the 23rd day of June. 2025. Good morning once again. Let me say good morning to Mr. Sylvan McIntyre. I think we get caught of that off air.
Yes, good chit chat this morning.
We got caught with that there for a wee bit. So how are you doing this morning, sir?
Well, I am doing absolutely good. I think in good spirit. Had a very wonderful weekend. I think the weather contributed to the very cool, calm kind of weekend that we had, that I had, basically.
It was one of those weekends. But it was kind of a mixture of a weekend, too.
Yes.
Saturday, the sun was blazing hot. Sunday,
right.
We had a mixture of rain and sun. Last night, it rained a whole lot last night. It rained a whole lot. But
yeah, it did.
It's all good. So,
but we had a tropical wave that was interacting.
I did receive that information.
There was one of them that was they were actually not located within Grenada's area of challenge, basically, but because the convection was so wide, one was quite down closer to Venezuela, south of us, and then there was the other, but it spanned a broad area, so that in itself was responsible for some of the water that we were getting. And I think the Met Office and NADMA, they were on it advising people that the rains were expected, and we did see them come. I think not to the extent to which people thought it was going to be. Obviously, it's better to be prepared, over-prepared, than to not be prepared at all. So the landslide warnings that came for areas that were so prone, that didn't happen. Yeah. But that, again, is a blessing. We didn't really want it to happen. And I think, as well, the rain was coming in patches. In different places, which to an extent is like to our advantage, that no one area was getting too much at any one time. It would be oversaturated.
So that was like a plus in some way or the other.
Plus in this way,
some places that needed it got it, some places that maybe should not have gotten it to the magnitude that didn't get it to the magnitude. So it's all right. But in my area, though.
One of the things, GT, I think also that people should understand that rain, tropical waves, and those heavy convections that gives precipitation or condensation, that has been existing.
Yes.
And rain is expected to fall. But what you find is that as soon as that release is given by or NADMA saying that we have a tropical wave coming through, people just get very antsy. It's just an indication that there would be water and that people should be prepared for it. And I think sometimes people take the wrong angle and figure, it's going to be, that kind of a way, and the information sometimes is not what we want, and they kind of are scaring us and all these things. They're saying to you, you need to prepare to prepare.
It all goes back to your mental state also, how you view things. Because, a lot of people still, maybe their mind is still on barrel.
Yes.
Some folks' mindset is still all the way back to Ivan. And, and so anytime information of that nature get disseminated for some reason, that panic way of attitude kicks in for some reason.
It does.
It kicks in. It may not be to the magnitude, but somehow that nervousness, boy, you ain't gonna fall, what's gonna happen? The winds feel a little heavy. What's gonna happen? And it's some folks may say it's human nature. We understand that.
Yeah.
But it creates it gets to the point where you have to have that mental readiness. And it's been, for the last couple of weeks we've been talking about preparedness.
Absolutely.
And it goes back, and if the folks have been listening to our conversation, I know they are listening, it just shows that if you understand the direction that we're trying to put your state of mind, things of that nature, you will be able to handle it differently, that going into that particular mood or feeling when something is announced.
Yes, because our information on our programs, they are progressive for the tropical cyclone/hurricane season. We kind of build people up just in the event that it does happen. I think we need more of like that.
Yeah.
And as we were speaking about media entities and so on, have the conversation around the issue so that people get. I think we mentioned in one of our program that the hurricane season or the tropical cyclone season should become, it's like maybe an exciting process. People and children should get involved and say, this is what we do. It's here every year. Yeah. These are some of the things that should happen.
You see, like how folks would have drills in relation to other things. You have the earthquake drills from time to time. Schools may have fire drills. What about having the conversation like a drill?
Yeah.
Just in case we hear, a tropical cyclone or hurricane is approaching the island, how to prepare ourselves to get ready for that?
Yeah, I'd wish to see it become like a family household activity.
Yeah.
You can create some fun ways of doing it in your family.
Yeah, this is what we're going to do.
Some people mimic the Met Office, some people can mimic NADMA kind of a thing, some people can mimic GBN or one of the radio entities, giving the information on what we do and so forth, and just before this kind of a thing, and you make it a little game, a little quiz, a little thing in a family setting. Maybe it's a thought that maybe it could be driven nationally, where we make it kind of a fun preparing.
Last week we did touch on it briefly also when we said, the information disseminated are relating to the season that we are in.
Yeah.
We should see more information about that via the broadcast media. Not only GBN, but it should be, part of the programming of all radio stations around the island.
Yeah.
Where from time to time they cut that slot and share information related to what the season, that get people's minds, in that direction. Hey, we read hurricane season that we're into.
Yeah.
These are the do's and don'ts. This is what you do. Not getting you into a panic mood, but just getting your mind in the direction knowing that, hey, we're into the season. This is what could be expected. This is what you do.
Right.
You understand?
So there's one entity I want to appeal to. I don't think it's going to be controversial.
Yeah.
But I think they are jab leaders.
Yeah.
I would like to hear a Hurricane Jab song. I would like to hear, because it's like they start the jab season in the hurricane season technically. So maybe the guys that are listening, pass it on to somebody. Tell them, create a chant that speak about Beryl, Ivan, maybe Janet, maybe Emily, maybe somebody.
The season in general.
And the season in general, and speak about full up your bucket, clean your drain. Them kind of a thing. Hurricane is coming again. You know what I'm saying? Those kind of a thing. And sing, well, last year we had Beryl, this year we don't want Cheryl. Them kind of a thing. So I think if you make it, and maybe that chant song kind of cool too, right?
Yeah, you may hear it in song. You never know.
Pick it up and let people know, well, the hurricane season is on. Have fun with it and use what is trending to reach people.
Yeah.
And I think as in the teaching and learning process, people would retain more by seeing and doing. Get them to participate and do the things that are relative to disaster risk reduction. I think that's a seller.
And that's a good idea, because those social gatherings from time to time, disseminating information of that nature in the particular manner in which you do it gets people mindset in. Because anything else could be absorbed easily. Yeah. Think about something negative happening, and you put it in those gatherings. The information spreads.
Yeah.
If you understand where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
And information of a positive nature like that. Put it in those kind of social gatherings, and you see what difference we make. And you see the difference how people would absorb the information and make use of it in under the particular condition, with understanding the true nature of what is taking place.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, good.
Yeah.
So
I probably,
what I'm saying?
I probably have to talk to our job.
So get your bucket, clear your drain, hurricane may come again. They're kind of a niceness.
And that's where the folks in authority, those are the kind of things folks in authority could be looking into.
Yeah.
Those informal settings, and disseminate information of that nature, and you will see a long distance it will certainly go.
Absolutely. So where we go back now to our flowers?
Yeah. Don't we forget about the jab thing.
The jab that picked your mind this morning.
Flowers this morning?
Yeah, not a lot, but I think in terms of what's happening around us, I want to give some flowers to the president of the media, MWAG, Callistra Faria.
Okay.
I really want to give her some flowers in terms of how she led the process this year in the media launch.
Media Week, I think.
Media Week launch. Some of the activities, the initiative to Carrico, I think that was commendable. Right. And even the issue of planting a tree in remembrance of, symbolic of the first media launch on the island, and as well, almost 1 year since the impact of Hurricane Beryl.
Yeah.
And I remember there was one time Carrier 3 to Carriacou. It brings us right back to that era where you're saying resuscitate your environment, make it more robust, make it more resilient. I think that's commendable. So I give them some flowers.
All right, great.
And let me just shout out our energy entity, Glen, this morning, finance staff and others who are always following us. I want to really say thank you, and I again give you flowers for working your initiative to ensure that, in particular, you're one notch above the rest in terms of disaster risk reduction. It's no secret we've been involved with Glen over the last couple of weeks, ensuring that they look at the internal instruments and mechanism. They've been doing some drills, doing some practicing, doing some training and so forth, leading up to, I think, last Wednesday was the last aspect of it into the hurricane season preparedness for the teams. I think they do need some flowers for that, and I commend management and those who really step on it. People see the energy entity, they're up, they seem very organized, they help us to get back energy as quickly as possible. I can tell you there's a lot that goes on behind the scene to make it happen.
That what's going on in the background.
Yes, and for that we really have to give them some flowers. And that they keep the flowers that they get, I think they're planting them. And they're beginning to.
And they flourish.
I think they're doing that.
Not only flourish, but it will flourish.
Yeah, because it's not the synthetic stuff. We're giving them real stuff.
It's the real thing.
And we're giving them a plant as well. So
it's the real thing. I mean, sometimes folks may not know about these things taking place.
Yes.
And then we wonder why the calmness and the easy way in terms of we see the employees of these entities perform after, a disaster so that may have taken place. But sometimes we have to understand what is taking place in the background.
In the background.
Yeah, that's how it goes back to what I said before, that mental readiness. Always.
And maybe they would not have come forward to blow the trumpet in that way. But because I'm aware of it, I like to commend people for a very useful initiative. And there are probably other companies who are doing things behind our entities in terms of disaster resilience. I think, as we really said a few times, GT, that disaster risk reduction and preparedness for the things that we really can't prevent, it has to become all hands on deck. We cannot depend just on the state system and mechanism. It's too much a stress there. The NADMA entity and so forth, and as a matter of fact, NADMA is everybody because it has private, public sectors and government and so on enshrined within the organizational structure. But if everybody takes up a small piece of it, we can be better off. If more people come on and say, let's do this, create an initiative, you see the thing, speak about it, you act on it, and so forth, we can become a stronger nation. At the end of the day, Grenada belongs to us.
So true.
And we want it to be a very wonderful place for our grandchildren and so forth to be able to enjoy.
Sometimes I think about it, sometimes I always like to give folks their separate, not acknowledgement, but when you look at these Asian countries and stuff who have these disasters taking place from time to time, and sometimes you see the readiness of the people when disasters take place. And you're thinking us here in the Caribbean, we may not having it all the time. We're seasonal, but sometimes they are off-seasonal. For some reason, things always happening. Either they will have an earthquake or they have something taking place, a tsunami, or something comes around. But they always have they're ready for these things. Think about us in the Caribbean having that particular mindset also. Even though they may have, lots of lives lost and so forth, but they were still ready for it coming.
Yes.
You understand? Ready for that. Not just the last minute, everybody's trying to get something done for the last minute. They were always at preparedness weeks and months ahead.
I think as well, excuse me, the Caribbean has been advertised and known for as a zone of peace and little kind of destructions. But if you look at it statistically in terms of per capita as to what happened, the economic impact and so on, it could be compared. I think we are the third in the world for quite a lot of things, disaster impacts and so forth, where we had COVID-19 and the effect it had, despite us losing just over 200 persons. And we may think, well, in compared to the millions that we're hearing, that's a little bit. But per capita, we were on par with the UK and the Americas and so forth, because the amount of people that we lost per capita could equate to what they were losing as well. So in terms of how we propagate and prolong the information, I think people get a false notion that not a lot is happening, and we're not that vulnerable and we're not that exposed. We are very exposed. When you look at HIV and the ratio that we had coming through, when you look at our consumption rate in terms of alcohol and all these things as small islands and how it is impacting us, I think we're not speaking sufficiently about it. We think to just pull the large numbers from the other countries and say, well, they have a problem. But when we pull it and realize, well, we only a drop in terms on the global stage. Into our population is X. But when you look at the ratio of the impact, that is really significant.
It says a lot.
And it says, and I think we need the technical people more and more to explain to the layman, the average person who don't understand statistics and the math, that will tell you, well, you are exposed, you are vulnerable, we are losing people. You know, the other conversation I was also having over the weekend is the post-traumatic stress disorder situation. In other words, I'm speaking about the death of people post a crisis or a disaster. Yeah. We had a lot of people who died after Hurricane Ivan. We had, I think, about 39 that died with a direct impact. Yes. But there are quite a number of persons who died after Hurricane Ivan. There are quite a number of persons who died after Hurricane Beryl. We only had, I think, 1 or 2 official deaths related to Hurricane Beryl.
Because he was directly in there, it was a direct
exactly.
At the time.
But we would need the experts to know, our psychologists or our social interveners to be able to come and tell us the number of persons who died because of those stress-related disorders that they had. Yeah. The kind of a thing that our senior citizens and our younger people went through. Those who are coming through did not get the kind of a relief that they should have gotten, and they're suffering those negative impact. That kind of statistic need to be released.
But do we have those statistics?
They are available. Yeah. If you speak to people from some entities, I think if we don't analyze it, in 2017 I went to the BVI after Hurricane Irma and Maria. And the number of people that died directly related to the impact was not significant. Yeah. But when I followed through, the number of people who died afterwards, it was so high, and it was the indirect relation, but they were all related to the hurricane. The people who could not have stand the pressure for the loss that they had, the people who were senior citizens and otherwise who could not have gone through the stress. Imagine now that we're going to be facing 2025 hurricane season. It's only a couple of days away from 1 year since Beryl impacted the people in Caricom, Petit-Matinic. They had not seen such a devastation maybe in their entire life. We'd not seen it either. Yeah. The people who worked, people who lived from remittances that came from abroad to help them build those houses. Those houses may not have been built to standard, so they lost all of it. They sold their fish, they had their agricultural practices, their corn and the arrowroots and those things in the older days that they grew, and to an extent the mulberry trees and so that they had, and sea moss. The kayaks and so forth, they would have put these things together, been very resilient, very resourceful. Yes. But they lost all of that. And I think a lot of people are thinking for themselves, how am I regaining myself? And that stress is sometimes underestimated. And I think it really points to how are we making that psychosocial intervention in Calico and Petit-Matinic and to the north of the island. For those people who lost these things, are we conducting a survey to find out where people are at? And are we going to give a report post-Beryl as to how many persons died the months after? So you have the few weeks, 3 months, 6 months, a year after. Within that period of time, there are a lot of people that are going to come down with psychological disorders, and that need to be documented. And we need to be able to find those persons and to be able to intervene to help them. Yeah. And I'm sure there are a lot of people who lost their lives. I'm sure there are a lot of people who are existing now, and they're having those replay and those trauma situations coming back to them, and they're not dealing with it very nicely.
But the stress also helps to develop other illness. Eh?
It does.
And sometimes you may think, well, it's unrelated, but it's related related somehow to that particular stressful situation that you may have experienced some time ago that caused the illness to expand in a particular way.
Yeah, and God help me, give me the strength. I want to go to the islands of Carcompiti, Martinique. I want to be able to assess for myself. So even if the formal state mechanism doesn't report on it, I would want to be able to generate my own impression. I would not be representing anybody. I would want to be representing myself. Okay. In terms of my interest in people and what is existing, I want to ensure the people of Carcompiti, Martinique, we take care of them. People who are impacted.
That's see for yourself.
Yeah, man. I like to see, feel for myself, understand for myself, and sometimes do for myself.
Yeah, and touch for yourself. Let's take that break, Mr. McIntyre. We're coming back. Stay with us, folks. To the Point, Classic Radio, GBN TV. We will be right back. Stay with us.
It's been 3 years since the NDC administration took office. This Monday at 8:30 p.m. on Beyond the Headlines, Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell sits down for a direct one-on-one conversation. Topics include key manifesto promises, the government's strategic priorities, Project Polaris, national health insurance, the MNIB, the agricultural sector, and much more. 3 years in, what's been done and what's next. Don't miss it, Monday at 8:30 p.m. with host Colin Dow. Beyond the Headlines, the issues, the impact, the insight.
A neurologist is a specialist physician who deals with conditions affecting the nervous system. So that includes the brain and the spinal cord and some muscle disorders as well.
Brain health is extremely important, not only for the patient, but for the family, and it affects our social, occupational, and emotional function.
Be viewing Caribbean Medical TV on this station.
Time to get charged up for the Fuller Energy Home Series as West Indies takes on Australia in a fiery test match from July 3rd to 7th at the National Cricket Stadium from 10 a.m. each day. Free entry plus fun activities for children under 16 years old. Adult tickets start at just $5 per match day. Let's rally with the men in maroon. Go to windiscricket.com to secure your tickets now. West Indies is back in the spice aisle and we full of energy. West Indies going higher, full of energy.
Welcome back, listeners. Once again, welcome back, viewers, to The Point here on Classic Radio GBN TV. I'm GT, your host, together with Mr. Sylvan McIntyre this morning. And, of course, our conversation, of course, is a follow-up to last week's, to a point.
Yes.
To a follow-up to that. I want us to get into the hurricane season, Mr. McIntyre. There's no doubt about that, no.
Absolutely.
And, the readiness is something that we have to focus a whole lot on. Mm-hmm. We can't stop telling folks. If we have to do this until the end of the hurricane season, every morning come here and tell people get themselves ready. Even though we may not be impacted by a hurricane in 2025, which, we will be certainly happy for.
Yeah.
But that readiness, on all levels.
Right.
How are we getting ourselves prepared for the season?
Yeah.
You understand? We spoke a whole lot about preparedness last week, but they coincide together, prepared and being ready, and for when that happens.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
Yeah. So again, we gave, when the season was about to be officially launched, something you could do pre.
Yeah.
We want to reiterate those aspects of checking around, ensuring the things that are likely or should go scarce or will go scarce. You try to make sure that you tap up on that, especially the things that will have a long life lasting thing with it, in terms of the energy, water, and some aspects of food sustenance and health. We emphasize those things. Coming into the season, you kind of do your preliminary as to what you need to do. And we spoke about when you get into the season, when things start happening and so on, what aspects of things that you need to do. And if we are impacted, how you should stay during the time that you're actually feeling the brunt of a tropical system that's impacting negatively. And when it is over, the post aspect of it or the aftermath, how you deal with it and how you handle it. And our history has shown that a lot of times, not just in Grenada, but across the Caribbean, people do not allow the emergency entity to do what they're supposed to do the way they should do it. And because a lot of people don't have a lot of information during what may have happened, so they are anxious about what they should do, where they should go. So it exposed the level of communication that we had before doing, and we know that sometimes during the impact, the hurricanes, the communication system get broken.
Yes.
And so people do not have a lot of information, so they act on what they feel they should really do. But what we are really saying is that if we put in sufficient information before, people understand the system and the mechanism, and not an individual. I want to stress, not an individual or a few individuals, but a system, a structure, so that if you do not have communication, people understand by reason of what they knew before what they should be doing.
Yeah.
And that makes good sense. So in peacetime or normal time, we need to load up people, bombard them with the information. They will not keep everything, but something should remain, something should stay. And so that's why we insist on giving people the information and repeating it. Today we speak about something on the program. The person who was not able to hear last time around, they would pick up a small bit. So sometimes we repeat ourselves.
Yes.
But we know that we are at least reaching another person different every time we speak. And that's what we need to continue to do. But one aspect of it that we decided we're going to zero in on, and we touched on it last week, is the aspect of shelters.
Shelters. Yes.
Shelter occupation, shelter management, shelter deactivation, and so on. What happens during that process and what people should do. And I remember we said that your home is your first and your best and should be your only shelter.
Yes.
And somebody called in and they supported us in that, in terms of how you should make your own facility around you more resilient to accommodate you and your family, and possibly somebody else who might be less able to prepare for themselves. And we also went into speaking about the Ministry of Education having sole responsibility to ensure that facilities designed for emergency shelters, that they have responsibility for it. And the law, as I said, has indicated that they should, and they have sole responsibility for shelter aspect where disaster risk reduction is concerned.
Should that really be like that in terms of the Ministry of Education? Yes, we understand most of the time we use schools as a form of shelter in Grenada, because that's what we have.
Yes.
You understand? But should there be that main body responsible for that? I
think because schools and state facilities are predominantly used as shelters, they have the mass or the larger spaces that people can use. It made sense then in the analysis that if you have the larger stake or the larger share of what is happening, that maybe you should be more responsible. And it worked for them. Yeah. But it is not because they are in charge that they are the one who has the say. It's a shelter management committee that involve all of the other sectors. So for instance, Housing Authority would sit on the shelter committee. Health would sit on the shelter committee. Police would sit there as security oversight, etc. And so it's a committee and not just the entity that will be able to provide everybody.
I was just trying to get it clarified in terms of how you said they are in charge of it. So
yes.
I just can have a bit of a clarification, because somebody will say, well, the Ministry of Education is what in charge of.
Supposedly, they have national oversight.
Exactly. For suppose now there's a breakdown in that entity when a hurricane occurs or whatever disaster occurs, how are they be able to get themselves up and running?
Yes.
If there's another body who is more experienced in that, you understand, taking care of shelters and stuff, where that automatic switch comes around when there's a disaster. I don't know if you get in the direction I'm taking.
No, I'm getting it for say, and it's the same thinking or similar thinking people out there would have, and maybe some don't even know, and they would think that the NADMA people up at Monjalo are the people who are responsible for it, but there's a system. And on the national structure, there is a head of those those management committees. So for instance, relief and supply management, there's a broad stakeholder entity, but the Marketing and National Importing Board, the chair of that board, the head of that board, chairs that committee. Whether or not that is appropriate now or it was then, it's another question whether the plan should be revised to indicate differently. Yeah. But it is not them solely responsible. They just chair the committee. But you have Ministry of Agriculture, you have somebody again from security, you have somebody from health, and all these other entities. They would form part of that board or that management committee. So you have somebody who's already an entity responsible for dealing with supplies, import, export, warehousing, storing, sorting, and distributing. And I think that is where the thinking came from, that if you're already involved in it, why not head it so you can direct those who are not used to it to be part of the system. And that's where, when that national plan was written, those functions were identified.
Not just to get into, I hope it's not too much of a diversion, but are these boards active year-round or only at a particular season? These boards in particular that you speak of?
Well, they should be active year-round because we agree and identified very early that emergencies can happen at any time. Yeah. And the facilities that exist as shelters, we said they are emergency shelters and not hurricane shelters. Yes. We also agreed that emergency can happen anytime and could affect anybody, anywhere. And if you have a serious landslide, as I mentioned the last time, that move a few houses, people will need shelter. Yeah. So that shelter management committee will be activated. No hurricane, no tropical system. They may also need food moving. Then the supplies management committee will also be activated. They may need medical care. The health committee is activated to provide that. They may be housed some places that would require some level of security. The security apparatus is activated. So it's I think the structure is well thought out, and those committees should be meeting throughout the year, and they should be going through the plans, going through the procedure and everything else. But GT, like most things,
something has to happen. We something happened.
Well, you said it. That's correct.
It goes back to a thought I've just come to mind. It's where we're talking about shelter and shelter management. Yes. Because from time to time we know when a disaster do happen. We're talking hurricane for saying these shelters gets damaged really easily. But should it happen in the shelter management? Whoever is in charge of managing those shelters, should there be that regular, going out and checking those shelters on a regular basis, making sure that the structure is at the standard that it should be. Yeah. We saw what happened in Carriacou. Of course, maybe we didn't expect the hurricane to be at that strength on nature at the time that it came around. Right. But so is that happening on a regular basis? Do you know of that happening on a regular basis where these individuals would go around and I just check this, unscheduled to a point, just go late. Let's do that this week. Let's do that this month. Go around, check all these shelters, making sure that they're up to par, just in case. Mm-hmm. If you get my direction.
Yeah, and your thinking is on point, and it's one of the things I personally advocated for, that we should not be so hurricane centric. Yeah. That during the official launch of the hurricane season, everything comes to the fore. If we keep giving people the information relative to readiness during the hurricane season, we will always be hurricane centric. We'll always be focusing on ready for hurricanes, and the other things will not be given the attention. And so creating the anxiety of the shelter readiness in June or May, it is still giving us the impression that we're just preparing for the hurricane season. So because they are emergency shelter, they don't have to necessarily be released during the month of June or May or July. They are just there throughout. So there should be a continuous shelter management process where those facilities are continuously checked and they are always resourced. So if you do have an emergency, we speak about disasters and hazards impacting, and we speak of rapid onset and slow onset. The slow onset ones are the ones that give you some level of warning. Yes. The rapid onset hazards that create disasters are the ones that they give you no warnings at all. So for instance, an earthquake just occurred, or a volcano just blew up. In some cases, volcanoes, they do give you a lot of indications. But let's use earthquakes, for instance. An earthquake just happened at a particular magnitude. A number of land space pull apart. A number of houses are destroyed or damaged or otherwise. You have to now move into action to accommodate number of people. It means, therefore, that your shelter maintenance and management process should not be a one-off inspection just from January to end of May. It should be a continuous, because it is an emergency facility. There should be continuous resourcing of them, and we understand what happened because schools are also designated.
Yes.
But there should be an aspect within those schools, and there should be an area within those schools, if they are supposed to be used, that you have some basic items and equipment that you don't necessarily have to rush to getting there. So there should be standard. Some things remain there that in the event that we have to accommodate some people rapidly, a number of persons, they could be used. And then you should have also multi-purpose facilities where if you have an emergency, they are utilized, and if you don't have an emergency, you can use them for community activities. There was a prototype that was built in Mariana a couple of years ago, and that it underlived its expectation, to be honest. I thought it was going to be better utilized and it was going to be replicated across country, but that has not happened, and I'm hoping that we would see the need to have even our community centers and our community facilities that we have, and I know that's what the intent was discussed to be, that you have those facilities that you use for community activities, for elderlies, for children, for trainings, etc. And when you have a situation where it has to be activated for a shelter, there's a room where these things are locked up. They're checked, they are maintained. And if it has to be converted into an emergency shelter, immediately you can accommodate people.
And in the quickest time span also.
Within the shortest period of time, you can do that. That is where we need to go. Right. And this is why I intended for us to have the conversation. And I want us to get to the point where we should prepare people for going to those shelters, because we see too many times people tend to believe that when you're going into the shelter, you're going on a vacation or something of that sort. You pack your little suitcase with sometimes nothing, and you expect to receive everything. And we want to change that mindset.
Yeah, I want us to get into the deactivation part of the shelters when we come back. I want you to spend a little time talking about that particular part of it. But just want to do that after the break. Stay with us, folks. We're coming right back. Don't touch it out.
Climate change is real. Storms are getting stronger, and droughts are lasting longer. Are you prepared for what's ahead? At Grenada Cooperative Bank Limited, we want to help you protect your...
Time to get charged up for the Fuller Energy Home Series as West Indies takes on Australia in a fiery test match from July 3rd to 7th at the National Cricket Stadium from 10 a.m. each day. Free entry plus fun activities for children under 16 years old. Adult tickets start at just $5 per match day. Let's rally with the men in maroon. Go to windiscricket.com to secure your tickets now. West Indies is back in the spice aisle, and we Fuller Energy.
West Indies going higher, Fuller Energy.
Our world is filled with rhythm. Rhythm that's unapologetic, infectious, timeless. Rhythm is commitment in action. It's how we show up for each other with unrelenting support that goes the distance. Rhythm lives in the tiny beats of our most intimate moments and the seismic roars of our biggest achievements. Rhythm is resilience in motion. So even when things go out of sync, we do what it takes to bring the rhythm back. At Flow, we understand your rhythm because we live it. That's why we're dedicated to building a network as resilient as you, with a team of familiar faces working every day to keep you on beat. You're at the heart of everything we do, and our commitment is to keep your rhythm flowing, no matter what.
It's been 3 years since the NDC administration took office. This Monday at 8:30 p.m. on Beyond the Headlines, Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell sits down for a direct one-on-one conversation. Topics include key manifesto promises, the government's strategic priorities, Project Polaris, national health insurance, the MNIB, the agricultural sector, and much more. 3 years in, what's been done and what's next. Don't miss it Monday at 8:30 p.m. with host Colin Dow. Beyond the headlines, the issues, the impact, the insight.
Welcome back, listeners. Welcome back, viewers. Once again, it's the point. We get into the final segment of this morning's program. Of course, your phone calls are ready also as we get into the segment I talked to Mr. McIntyre about the deactivation. Now, I want you to speak to me about that. Highlight it a wee bit about shelters deactivation. Tell me a little bit. Explain that to me a wee bit. Maybe there's someone who's listening to this morning. What is it that he's talking about? Shelter deactivation.
Yeah. So, whenever there is an emergency that requires people to be accommodated for a short period of time, and I maintain short period of time, there is what you call the process of occupying the facility. And if you have a situation where an emergency or a situation that may create an emergency response is looming. For instance, you may have a tropical system threatening Grenada and it reaches the warning phase, which is 36 hours before it actually impacts. There is a process called activation, meaning you would put your systems in place in the event it happened for people to, and the activation process do have some procedure with it. So it tells you what you need to do during that. Then there's the occupation stage where people would come into the facilities, and there's actually a procedure as to what you should do, what you should bring into the shelter. And then there's the shelter management process where a team of persons is identified to manage each shelter. And it's not an individual, it's a team of persons that have different responsibilities. So you have somebody responsible for stores, somebody responsible for health, somebody looking for art security, and you have an overall manager, etc. And now we're seeing somebody who has an oversight for the psychosocial and the health aspect of it that should be embedded within the system. So that is the management team. And when all that is in place, when people need to return to near normal, you have the deactivation process. So deactivation speaks of what you do to get back to a near or to the previous state of normalcy as close as possible. Now that includes the information process, where there you assess people as to whether or not they are ready
to leave.
Well, some people are never ready to leave. Whether the condition make it okay for them to go back to where they came from. Because people left their places, some did not really have some place and they came in. But what they are and how they are treated where they are brought is a lot better than where they probably would go back to. So they don't want to leave anytime soon.
Some folks may be happy to get them out also.
Yes. And some places where they may be, some may be based on the behavior.
Behaving before, and you leave for that, they say, well, that is the opportunity to get you out. Now, in trying to deactivate that shelter, how are you going to get them out now?
Yeah. So when you get into the deactivation phase, it is announced, well, the emergency situation is over. It is rehabilitation, and now we're going into reconstruction. So the system and individuals, they begin to assess people's psychological readiness to go out. There's the physiological assessment, meaning whether the houses, the meals, and the other thing that's supporting them, it is ready to accommodate them where they're going to go back to. And whether or not in particular the physical structure is ready for them to reoccupy. And sometimes we do not do that well. People are told you have to leave now, and they will ask you, where do I go? You need to get back to your job, and people will, where do I go and how do I rehabilitate? So that process is a stage by stage, step by step, analyzing what should be done, how it should be done, what kind of an impact it is likely to have on the individual, their community, and their society if they are going to be brought back. It's just like you taking somebody who served their time in prison or otherwise. They've been denied their regular life for a period of time. similar. Somebody's brought into a shelter, they have been denied the normal privilege and access to something that they may have had for a period of time. So there has to be a briefing process. There has to be an assessment undertaken.
So there's no timeline with it per se?
Sometimes you have to give a timeline.
Yeah.
And work towards the timeline. So we mentioned that shelter occupation is for a very brief period while the emergency exists. But when the emergency doesn't exist anymore, you have to do an assessment as to whether or not. We know people who've gone into shelter, and today, after years, they're still in shelter because the society has not embraced them properly, and the system has not created the enabling environment to get them to be rehabilitated. So they have to stay on state and government support for extended period of time because they don't have sometimes family to go back to, and they don't have structure to go back to, and the state sometimes does not cater for them, and that raises another question. For sometimes the destitute people that we see around, how does our society embrace them? Only a couple of days ago, a very concerned citizen and other persons called me up for somebody that they saw that's not too far from the GBN that probably was living in dilapidated condition in a downstairs place, and he was getting support from somebody who cared. And this person been there for a while, and we're saying, has society forgotten the responsibility that there are people among us who we need to identify and care for them? Does our psychosocial environment embrace and have a system where you would identify these people and take them into some care? So even the whole aspect of getting people back into a living condition after something would have happened, it leaves a lot to be desired. Some people are forgotten. Our survey do not capture them. The instruments we designed to capture certain information, they leave, in my opinion, a lot to be desired as well. And the process of getting that information has to be revamped quite a bit, because deactivation, getting back into a state of normalcy or near normalcy, is not well understood by a lot of people. And so before things actually happen, we need to walk through that, because people come to a shelter and they come with nothing, as I said, and they want to leave with everything, and sometimes they don't have a place to take those things that they want to leave with. And those are the things that the state provide for that period of emergency, and they would need to reclaim them or take them back and sanitize and prepare them for when the next emergency occurs.
Sometimes there are particular things that could be reused just in case we have another disaster or emergency that they need to be used for.
And there will be. And so we just have to work on the premise that things will happen again, and we need to be ready for it. And so we have to be able to transfer that information to individuals that hear what? While we cater and care for you now, there will be other people that will need that kind of care in the not too distant future. I hope it's not. But down the road, when something happened, we would need to put structures in place to accommodate them.
And that's what the conversation we speak in terms of getting people mentally ready. Because if these conversations are had beforehand, people will understand. Yes, you come in, you may get this or that in a shelter, but it's not for you to leave with.
Yeah.
And sometimes folks don't understand that until you've been told, well, I thought you give me a blanket, so it's mine.
Right.
You understand?
Right.
Or you give me a cot that I can sleep on, so I'm thinking when I'm done, I'm supposed to fold that up and go home with it and go wherever I need to go, where I'll be taking refuge again.
Well, speaking about cots, blanket, and mattresses, I saw that process in St. Vincent and Grenadines after the volcano exploded. People went in those shelters, and we were getting thousands of cots. And then we were getting all of these mattresses and blankets and so on for people. And there were people who were building their families out of it. They were moving with more than one. And I'm sure if a survey is undertaken in St. Vincent, you may find some of these things around. People who sometimes really didn't need it. And so when a disaster happened, people abuse the situation, and that's why the authority has to be on top of its game even now that you put the structures in place, that when these things happen, it's not a personal fit, it's a fit for the situation that is current. And we want to be able to be better prepared for when something has happened.
For we say, you're dealing with human beings, we expect things of that nature.
But human beings could understand.
You understand. But we say, well, we all human beings, these are the things that are expected to happen.
And GT, one of the things in shelter occupation that we need to mention. When people need to go to a shelter, it is not when house roofs start blowing out and things start pelting all over the place and so on. That would be probably a moment too late. And we know there are people who've been crowned as heroes and so on, and they got awards and so on because they were out during the hurricanes and other things helping people. That is a condition, especially for law enforcement and otherwise, that they have to emphasize to people. There is no good reason to put people at additional risk when the warning would have been released before saying to people, if you have to occupy shelters, if you assess that your facility would not resist an event or something that is happening, you need to go to the shelter before it actually starts getting worse.
Yeah.
And so the system should even capture people that are vulnerable, that need to be evacuated and brought into those facilities even before the thing happened. And so there's a dependence on the system. We are saying it is very good to do search and rescue and to do rescue of persons only when it is assessed that we are not putting other persons into undue harm's way. People, they bash the police, they bash the military or other persons who do not come or are not able to move under certain condition when people are at risk. There are times when you do take the risk to help other people who might be in more risk. It is not a guarantee that law enforcement and otherwise will be able to get to certain people when things are happening. They must assess the risk themselves to be able to rescue other people. What I am saying here is that you do not cause undue risk to be placed on other people when you can prevent that situation by moving early.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to assessing your property all your clock. As some
properly.
Say, accessing your I don't think this would withstand the hurricane.
Yes.
At whatever level it may be at. So let me go to the shelter.
And when you go into the shelter, not because you like pork very well and you like your pig, they're going to try to bring a pig with you to the shelter. And because you have your dogs and your cats and everything else, that they are accommodating shelters. They're not.
Yeah.
So I think now there is, I think the GSPC and other entities, I think there's a private entity now who are generating animal shelters, which is a good thing. Yeah. We must care for animals, we must love them. And there are animals that are trained to take care of people, to look after their psychological situation that they go through, and those could be accommodated, but there has to be a particular area and way to accommodate them. And because we speak about pets and other animals, there has to be animal pets shelter that people can put them there and know that they're safe. They cannot be accommodated along with regular people.
Understandably so. Back at that, I think we do have a caller online. Let's take a call. So the lines are now open. We have just about 6 more minutes left on today's program, but we'll accommodate our caller too if they come in. Caller, you're live. Good morning and welcome.
Yes, good morning, GT, and good morning to Mr. McIntyre, and good morning to all of my GBN family.
Good morning.
Listen, Mr. McIntyre, I want to really commend you. Listen, there's a book that I read, and it's called the BIBLE. And listen, there is no retirement plan in that book, because all of us, we have to work until we die. And I applaud you because the fact that you have given human service to the country, the police, and now you're educating the nation. I wish, above all, that many more persons would be like you. Take up that mantle. Because listen, we have a lot of people, a lot of persons in our society, ex-police officers, ex-ministry officials, and so on. And what they do, they are in retirement. I'm just sitting back. But the country, our beloved country, needs them more than ever. And I just wanted to give you my flowers.
Oh, thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you a whole lot. Thanks a whole lot. 435-2041. We still accommodate our caller too. Of course, if the conversation you have is around, of course, the direction we're going at this morning, feel free to call. We do have another caller. Caller, you're welcome. Good morning.
Hello, good morning, Vicky, and good morning to Mr. McIntyre.
Good morning to you also.
All right, Mr. McIntyre, you had a program, I think it's teaching the people some first aid, and I want to applaud you for that program. And I would like you to encourage, some people go in a classroom, they learn something, and then when they do no follow-up, sometimes they even forget the question. But I would like you to encourage those people to teach their home. Everybody in a house supposed to know a little about first aid because people don't hear hard today. Because I had an experience, and thank God my son had a little know about first aid, and that helped me just a drink of water. I was brushing my teeth, and I grabbing my throat with some water, and some end up down in my lungs. And Mr. McIntyre, it was not good experience. I couldn't speak. It's just like a sign I have to make, and like I can't breathe, but I run in the room, and my son pulled me in a back. He bent me forward, he did behind me back, and he pushed up, and he pushed, and I could feel that water come out in my lungs. If nobody didn't know what to do, trust me, I was a body now. So I would like you to encourage the people what learn, and they home pass it on to the children, the household, and even the community. Have a session with them and let this thing be alive. Don't let that exercise die out.
Great.
You. Thank you so much.
Ma'am. Thank you. That was really good.
Yeah, we do have another caller. Caller live. Good morning via WhatsApp. Good morning, you're welcome.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. McIntyre. And also GT. I wanted to say GT first, but Mr. McIntyre.
Doesn't matter. That's all right, man. It doesn't matter. Go right ahead, man.
Anyway, good. I mean, the continuation of this program is very commendable. And it is pointing to what I've been saying for a long time. We need to have a community development approach, a community development approach to things. Otherwise, all those good sounding things would go to waste. Even the police have to have some level of community training. And you see, the other thing about Mr. McIntyre, we have to try and convince our people that this hurricane thing or this disaster thing is not something in the past where it might visit us once in a while. We may even get hurricanes 2 and 3 times a year hitting us, as is in the case of the Philippines. So we have to prepare our people to have preparedness mindset in motion.
All right,
so that once things seem to be coming, we could take action. We know who needs to be moved, where they need to be moved, and all of that. But it has to take a cooperative, collaborative community approach, not this, me and my family and so on, blah, blah, blah. Mr. McIntyre, also, last week, a few over.
Well, we are a bit strapped for time, so if we could, wrap up, please.
The Prime Minister made a statement at the Atlantic Council where he gave a feature speech where he said we need to move from building back better to building back to last. And I say this because even the Philippines, who thought they were looking into the future and built a structure 10 years before, which lasted 10 years, but then some hurricane came and knocked it off. We need to look at how we build things that could last, and even if we get a little damage, we could do quick repairs it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, caller. Thank you. We do have another caller. Caller live. Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Good morning to you,
Mr. McIntyre.
Yes, sir.
From what is worth, and that building that is donated by the American government in River Sally, by the River Sally Community Center, I was informed that it's leaking. I don't know what that is, but I think the relevant authority should go there and see that building is leaking or not. Because I think it has something to do with emergency.
Yes.
And when you say build back better, how can a country build back better by using the sand on the beach, which is tainted with salt? Have a nice day, brother.
Thank you so much. We do have another caller, which will be maybe our final caller for the morning. Caller via WhatsApp. Good morning, and you're live.
Good morning, GT, and good morning, Mr.
McIntyre.
Mr. McIntyre.
Yes, sir.
McIntyre. Yes, sir. There was one thing that I do notice, though, and I'll tell you what. When I was some years ago, I was shelter manager for a particular shelter, and I recognized that the availability of water storage seemed to be somewhere on the down low. I did reach out and try to get that shelter to get some water storage, because I recognize that in the event that there is the need to use some of these shelters, they would be out of water very quickly because of the amount of people and the amount of use of bathrooms facility. That would not be able to last. So I'm thinking that maybe that is one of the areas that should be looked into to make sure that these shelters have that water storage facility. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. Thank you,
great caller. I just want to
very important point there.
Expand on the very important point you made. Every school and every facility identified as a shelter should be. I don't want to use the word must, but to the extreme it must be, because people will require water. So there has to be some storage facility. And I know there was a project, there was one time Nawasa did something with PBC as a project with them. I saw the sign up even recently, outfitting some of the facilities around with storage facilities. It should be a state responsibility to ensure every facility that is identified as a shelter should be outfitted with at least one storage facility. And it should be the way you benchmark your quantity is based on the amount of persons you are expected to accommodate over a period of time. But there has to be a starting point where you have a base amount of water storage. Right. It should be.
Mr. McIntyre, that's what we're going to take a wrap for today. And always an interesting program as always informative. Certainly hope our listeners and viewers, of course, understand the direction that in what we present in the program to them. Mm-hmm. Just it's as simple as we say, that mental readiness. Readiness. Anything we can close it, sir?
I just want to urge people again, let the safety factor and the readiness factor be. For and foremost, it doesn't have to be a tropical cyclone. It could be just about anything that produces some kind of risk, and it can become a disaster. Having the know-how about it, and as one caller intimated, at least one person in your household should know how to handle some aspect of emergency.
Yeah. Until next week, sir. Have a good one.
Bless.
And bless. Yes. For callers and viewers and listeners, folks, we want to thank you also for contributing towards today's program. Join us again next week for another edition. That's how we say goodbye for today's edition. Goodbye, folks.